The biblical account of the global flood describes how God decided to return the universe to its state prior to creation and remake the world from a microcosm of salvation represented by Noah's ark. This scene, rather than a punishment, suggests a restart that erases what was in order to allow a new beginning. The idea that human history can be interrupted and restarted is not foreign to the scriptures. Humanity's journey through time seems to be marked by cataclysms that end one era and give rise to another, as if the Creator were using cycles of destruction and renewal. This script poses a question that challenges the linear concept of progress. What if our history has been restarted again and again? Not 2 or 3, but 21 times. Join me to explore this possibility on a journey that links myths, archaeological discoveries, and new perspectives on our past. Before we begin, I invite you to subscribe to our channel, The Secret Bible, and to promote this content so that more truth seekers discover what we will reveal here. Chapter 1. The Great Cycle. Theory. The idea of a hidden past in which humanity periodically restarts seems taken from a fantasy novel. However, when we look at the magnitude of the geological and climatic changes the Earth has experienced, this notion takes on an unsettling hue. On the surface of our planet lie traces of previous eras, layers of sediments dragged by seas that once covered continents, scars from glaciations that carved mountains and valleys, vestiges of meteorites that released unimaginable energy, and signs of volcanic eruptions that darkened the skies for years. Throughout its long existence, the planet has undergone abrupt transformations that altered living conditions and forced species to adapt or disappear. These catastrophes are not isolated coincidences, but recurring events, and within them arises the suspicion that humanity may have been witness to and victim of multiple destructions and rebirths. When we hear talk of restarts, we think of the biblical flood. But beyond the sacred narrative, geology and paleontology have reconstructed stories of complete glaciations that froze vast expanses, tsunamis that erased coastal cities, cosmic impacts that triggered climatic changes, and volcanic episodes that altered the atmosphere. Each of these events has the potential to provoke a cultural reboot, the collapse of civilizations, the loss of knowledge, and the need to begin again from the foundations. To understand the magnitude of these cycles, we must explore the traces of catastrophes in different times and places, and see how ancient narratives seem to recall again and again the same sequence of destruction and rebirth. Chapter 2. Echoes across time. The first element that surprises those who study ancient cultures is the presence of structures that defy conventional explanation. Sites such as Göbekli Tepe in Anatolia, with its monolithic pillars adorned with animal reliefs, date to more than 10,000 years ago. In South America, the stones of Pumapunku fit with a precision that challenges the stone or copper tools known at the time. In Lebanon, the gigantic slabs of Baalbek weigh hundreds of tons and were placed with such exactness that the joints are barely perceptible. Further east, the remains of submerged cities off the coasts of India and Japan suggest the existence of flourishing settlements before the waters reclaimed them. These architectural anomalies, scattered around the globe, share a mystery. Their construction methods seem to exceed the capabilities attributed to the peoples of their era. Could they be vestiges of civilizations that prospered before a great restart, and whose skills were lost in the subsequent downfall? Accompanying these structures are geological evidences of rapid and devastating changes. The transitions between glacial and interglacial periods occurred on relatively short timescales, in some cases within decades. The theory of the impact of a fragment of a comet during the Younger Dryas suggests that a sudden event cooled the planet and altered ecosystems and human populations. Archaeological chronologies show us cities that flourished and disappeared without apparent explanation, perhaps annihilated by tsunamis or massive earthquakes. These traces indicate that human history is not a continuous progress, but a succession of rises and falls, like waves of the sea that advance and retreat on the same beach, leaving behind remnants of what they dragged. Chapter 3. The enigmatic number. 21. Where does the assertion come from that there have been 21 restarts in human history? This number does not appear explicitly in Genesis, nor in official chronicles, but it is a thread that can be woven from traditions, ancient calendars, and esoteric theories. In the Hindu worldview, history is divided into yugas, and each complete cycle consists of 4 ages that repeat in an eternal turn. Some interpreters extend these cycles to larger numbers, suggesting that a complete sequence equals several restarts. In Mesoamerica, the Maya calendar marks the passage of great cycles that culminate in renewals of the world, and some have associated the long count with 21 significant cycles. Likewise, in certain Gnostic and Kabbalistic texts, it is mentioned that humanity has experienced stages prior to the current one, each ending in destruction and followed by a new beginning. Although the number may not have a literal basis, it symbolizes the idea of repetition and totality, as if pointing to 21 times were a way of saying many times. It is likely that the number is a metaphor or a teaching tool, but it invites us to reflect on the recurrence of patterns in history. Civilizations rise, reach a zenith and then decline. Knowledge accumulates and then is lost. Societies expand and then retract. The number 21 in different traditions sometimes represents perfection or the closure of a cycle, and its application to human restarts suggests a complete cycle of eras that repeats. This perspective pushes us to seek connections between ages that seem disconnected, and to consider the possibility that our present time is just one stage within a wider pattern. Chapter 4. Revealed allegories. Flood narratives are not exclusive to the Bible. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, Utnapishtim builds a vessel and survives a flood sent by the gods. In Greek mythology, Deucalion and Pyrrha save themselves from a flood that devastates humanity. The Sumerian text of Atrahasis tells how Enki instructs Atrahasis to build a boat that will withstand Enlil's punishment. In the Hindu tradition, the god Vishnu, in the form of a fish, warns Manu about an imminent flood and asks him to build a boat to save life. In the Yoruba culture of West Africa, there are stories of divine floods that have cleansed the earth to allow a new beginning. The Popol Vuh of the Maya describes several eras of creation and destruction, where humanity is molded and destroyed repeatedly by the gods. These stories, separated by oceans and millennia, share a common core. Humanity is wiped out by a watery cataclysm, and through divine or heroic intervention, a seed is preserved to rebuild the world. Such recurrence invites us to think of a shared memory of real disasters, or a universal allegory about the fragility and resilience of life. In addition to floods, there are narratives of global fires, heavenly wars, and prolonged darknesses. The Indian Mahabharata tells of a devastating conflict that ends with the fall of weapons of indescribable power, whose description some compare to contemporary detonations. In the apocryphal literature of Enoch, it is described how beings from the heights descend and corrupt creation, provoking a devastating judgment. In Norse myths, Ragnarok announces a total destruction, followed by the rebirth of the world. The Book of Revelation in the New Testament paints a scenario of judgment and cosmic renewal. These narratives, in essence, are not simple moral warnings but symbolic representations of cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. Their repetition in different cultures suggests that the ancients understood the rhythm of nature and societies and encoded their wisdom in poetic, imagery-laden forms. Chapter 5. The Human Heritage. If we accept that our history has been restarted several times, the next question is, what lessons can be drawn from this vision? First, resilience is a fundamental characteristic of our species. Over the millennia, humanity has survived periods of extreme cold, endless droughts, devastating diseases and conflicts that could have led to extinction. After each crisis, the survivors rebuilt society, innovated new technologies, and redefined culture. This capacity for recovery shows that although conditions change drastically, there is an internal drive toward life and growth. The collective memory of previous disasters also drives creativity. The desire to leave records, myths, and monuments that warn future generations about recurring dangers. In this way, legends and sacred texts serve not only as spiritual stories, but as archives of traumatic experiences encoded in symbols and teachings. Another lesson refers to the relativity of progress. If highly developed civilizations have existed before and were destroyed, then our sense of modern superiority is diminished. The current technological dominance could be just one more phase in a cycle, not a final culmination. Becoming aware of this may foster humility and prudence. It can inspire us to preserve vital knowledge and develop resilient systems that can withstand future crises. It also encourages us to value cultural diversity, as in each restart languages, arts, and sciences are lost, and what remains is a fraction of human richness. Each culture is a bank of memory that may contain keys to surviving different scenarios, so protecting it is protecting humanity's ability to reinvent itself. Chapter 6. Archaeological Evidence and Anomalies. If there were restarts, where are the physical proofs? Beyond the sites already mentioned, there are intriguing traces around the world. In Turkey, the underground complex of Derinkuyu extends dozens of meters below ground and could house thousands of people, suggesting the need for massive shelters. In Iran, the tunnels of Nushabah demonstrate that certain societies built underground cities to protect themselves from unknown threats. In Egypt, the erosion marks on the Sphinx point to torrential rains that occurred thousands of years before the Pharaonic dynasty. In South Africa, gold mines discovered in remote areas date to an antiquity that confounds archaeologists. The megaliths of Nabta Playa, aligned with solstices and constellations, speak of advanced astronomy at a time when humans are supposed to have been simple nomads. These evidences suggest that humanity possessed knowledge and capabilities that were forgotten and later rediscovered, which fits the idea of cycles of advancement and loss. Moreover, ancient cartography holds surprises. Maps such as that of Piri Reis show ice-free coastlines in Antarctica and details of coasts considered prehistoric. Although the interpretation of these maps is controversial, they fuel the notion that there were explorers and cartographers earlier than official history accepts. Similarly, discoveries of metallic artifacts embedded in deep geological layers and stories of crystalline structures found in mines suggest that ancient technological activity might have been more complex than previously thought. If we accept that erosion, cataclysms, and tectonic movements destroy or sink entire cities, then these isolated clues could be the remnants of civilizations erased by successive restarts. Chapter 7. Climate Changes and Natural Catastrophes. Nature itself seems to teach us that change is the only constant. Ice core records show periods in which temperatures rose or fell abruptly. The melting of the polar caps 12,000 years ago raised sea levels more than 120 meters, covering coastal plains and displacing entire peoples. Super eruptions, such as that of Lake Toba in Sumatra 74,000 years ago, released ashes that darkened the sky and caused a bottleneck in the human population. Cosmic impacts, though rare, have caused mass extinctions and altered global ecosystems. These phenomena, although natural, can be interpreted as restarts because they force the species to adapt to a new normality. In the context of our narrative, each catastrophe becomes a chapter in a much longer book, in which humanity repeatedly faces its own vulnerability. There are more recent events that offer a view of how a society can collapse in the face of an environmental crisis. The so-called Little Ice Age in Europe, which lasted from the 14th to the 19th century, affected crops, caused famines, and reconfigured political landscapes. The eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815 triggered the year without a summer, causing agricultural losses and mass migrations. These examples show that even advanced societies can falter before the force of nature. If we imagine similar events on a larger scale or repeated at different times, the concept of restarts becomes less far-fetched and more plausible. Chapter 8. Ancient Calendars and Cosmic Cycles. Many ancient cultures developed complex calendars that not only measured the passage of time, but also marked eras. The Maya calendar, with its long count, spans thousands of years and is linked to the ending and beginning of ages. In Chinese tradition, there is talk of great cycles covering thousands of years that repeat in patterns. In the Western world, the precession of the equinoxes, which takes approximately 26,000 years to complete, has been used to divide history into astrological ages. Some esoteric interpretations suggest that each era brings energetic changes that influence the development of civilizations. The coincidence of significant astronomical events with cultural changes has fueled theories that humanity responds to cosmic rhythms. In this view, restarts would not be accidents but stages of a cosmic clock that moves with precision. Even the Bible contains references to cycles and designated times. The book of Ecclesiastes says that there is a time to be born and a time to die, a time to destroy and a time to build. This vision recognizes that existence is composed of phases that succeed each other inexorably. In Revelation, the trumpets announce judgments that destroy part of the world and allow the establishment of a new reality. Some interpreters see in these images a key to understanding that history moves in spirals, where events repeat at different scales and contexts. If these cycles are recorded in calendars and sacred texts, they could represent ancestral wisdom about the periodicity of human rebirths. Chapter 9. The Symbolism of the Flood and Other Catastrophes. The global flood, besides being a historical or mythical account, is a symbol of purification. Water wipes away the earth and eliminates corruption, but it also fertilizes and gives rise to new forms of life. In many cultures, the flood represents the cleansing of a world saturated with evil and its subsequent transformation into something pure. In spiritual terms, the flood is a metaphor for passing through a crisis that forces people to shed the superfluous and rebuild their life on more solid foundations. When analyzing the restarts from this symbolic perspective, we discover that destruction is not always punishment, but an opportunity for renewal. The repetition of floods and catastrophes in the collective memory can be a reminder that change, although painful, is necessary for evolution. Other natural elements, such as fire and wind, also possess symbolic meanings. Fire consumes and transforms, leaving ashes that fertilize the earth. Wind sweeps and cleans, but it also carries seeds to faraway places where they can germinate. In stories of falling civilizations, these elements often appear as forces that trigger a restart. The repeated appearance of these symbols in different cultures suggests that the ancients saw in the forces of nature a manifestation of divinity or destiny. By connecting these symbols with historical restarts, we understand that the language of myths speaks of realities both physical and spiritual. Chapter 10. Linear History versus Cyclical History. Modern education tends to teach history as a series of cumulative advances, from primitive life to agriculture, then urbanization, the Industrial Revolution, the digital age, and so on. This linear narrative conveys the idea of constant progress toward a better future. However, the evidences we have explored invite us to question this conception. When observing the patterns of rise and fall of civilizations, the destruction of knowledge, and the repetition of myths, a cyclical image emerges. Each time human beings reach a high level of development, an event arises that forces them to start over. This cyclical perspective does not deny progress, but places it in a context where each advance is threatened by forces that can undo it. The fusion of these two visions, linear and cyclical, can offer a richer understanding. Humanity progresses, but within a circle of crises and rebirths. This combination is reflected in many ancient philosophies. For the Greeks, time had two aspects: chronos, linear time, and kairos, the opportune time that repeats. In the Aztec conception, the universe passed through 5 suns, each one ended by a disaster and followed by a new beginning. For the Hindus, the yugas repeat in eternal cycles, but within each cycle there is growth and decay. Integrating these ideas into our modern understanding can help us accept the possibility of restarts and prepare for them, instead of viewing history as a smooth, upward line. Chapter 11. Spiritual Implications of the Restarts. Accepting that humanity has lived through several destructions and rebirths implies a deep reflection on the meaning of our existence. In spiritual terms, restarts can be interpreted as collective tests that humanity must overcome in order to grow. Each time a civilization collapses, the opportunity arises to purify what was corrupted and to establish a more just society. In this sense, restarts become acts of divine mercy that allow deviations to be corrected and life to be realigned with universal principles. The Abrahamic religions speak of a God who corrects and guides his people when they stray from the path. Eastern religions speak of the law of karma and samsara, where souls pass through cycles until they reach enlightenment. Both perspectives agree that repetition and renewal are tools for learning and elevation. This spiritual view also urges individual and collective responsibility. If we know that human actions influence the stability of civilization, then our actions have a weight that transcends our lives. Corruption, violence, and negligence can precipitate crises that affect future generations. By contrast, kindness, wisdom, and prudence can mitigate disasters and preserve knowledge. In this narrative, each person participates in the fabric of humanity's destiny, and the recognition of the restarts motivates us to act with greater awareness. The idea of a great number of restarts is not a message of fatalism, but an invitation to hope and to commit to building a more solid future on the memory of previous cycles. Chapter 12. The Future of Humanity and Our Current Trajectory. If history is cyclical, and if we have gone through multiple restarts, what can we expect from the future? Some voices believe that we live in a critical moment. Global warming, loss of biodiversity, pollution, and geopolitical conflicts indicate that we face challenges that could trigger a new restart. At the same time, we have unprecedented scientific and technological knowledge that allows us to foresee and prevent disasters. The key lies in how we use this wisdom. If we follow a path of irresponsibility, we could head toward a crisis that forces a new beginning. But if we learn from the lessons of the past, we could guide the transition toward a more harmonious society without the need for a total collapse. The possibility of restarts also reshapes our understanding of the human mission. Each generation not only receives a legacy, but also decides what legacy to leave. Awareness of cycles pushes us to preserve vital information in a way that is accessible to those who come after. This could mean developing libraries resilient to cataclysms, safeguarding seeds and essential knowledge, and transmitting stories that inspire future generations. It also encourages us to seek balance with nature, recognizing that our well-being is linked to the health of the planet. If restarts are real, humanity has the opportunity to break the destructive cycle by learning to live in harmony with the rhythms of the earth. Chapter 13. Modern Perceptions and Current Debates. In academic and popular forums, the idea of multiple restarts of humanity generates debate. Some scientists and archaeologists maintain that there is not enough evidence to affirm that 21 global destructions have occurred. For them, ancient civilizations prospered and fell for simpler reasons, such as resource depletion, internal conflicts, and local climate changes. However, other researchers and independent thinkers point to anomalies and gaps in the official history. They argue that chronologies could underestimate the antiquity of certain structures, and that patterns of sudden disappearance suggest more dramatic events. This tension between positions highlights the need for an open mind that accepts new hypotheses without sacrificing scientific rigor. The general public is also divided. While some consider these theories attractive speculations but without basis, others find in them an explanation for questions that the official history does not answer. Popular culture, with movies and books that explore mysterious lost realms, fuels the imagination and interest in these topics. This rise in attention can be positive if it is channeled towards serious research and respectful dialogue between disciplines. The history of humanity is still incomplete, and each new piece of the puzzle can come from both science and oral tradition and myth. The truth might be found at a midpoint between poetic narratives and measurable data. Chapter 14. Common elements in destruction myths. When comparing myths from different cultures, patterns emerge that suggest a common root. Among them, the presence of a cataclysm that destroys humanity, a survivor or chosen group that preserves memory, and a time of rebirth in which order is rebuilt stands out. This structure appears in the story of Noah, in the tale of Utnapishtim, in the myth of Ziusudra, in the Chinese epic of Nuwa and Fuxi, and in the traditions of the indigenous peoples of North and South America. Often, the survivors receive divine instructions to guard knowledge and repopulate the earth. This pattern suggests a message. Life can be annihilated, but there is always a spark that allows its reappearance. Another common element is warning. The myths not only describe the disaster but explain why it occurred. They speak of moral corruption, rampant violence, and imbalance between human beings and nature. These warnings function as lessons for those who listen. If we interpret the myths as reflections of real events, then the moral is clear. Human conduct influences the possibility of a restart. If we see them as allegories, then they teach universal values. In both cases, stories of destruction and rebirth reinforce the importance of living according to principles that maintain harmony with the world and with others. Chapter 15. Science versus Myth. Modern science seeks to be based on empirical and repeatable evidence. Myth, on the other hand, operates with symbols and metaphors. This difference leads many to dismiss ancient accounts as inventions. However, the two views can complement each other. For example, geologists investigating glaciations or cosmic impacts may find inspiration in legends. Archaeologists exploring submerged ruins may consider flood narratives as clues. Astrophysics and geology can explain phenomena that, in ancient times, were narrated in the form of stories. In turn, myth can offer a language that speaks to the spirit and conveys teachings that science does not directly address. One example of this fusion is the study of climate. Scientific records show that 12,000 years ago there was a sudden cooling called the Younger Dryas, which has been related to a possible comet impact. Some North American tribes have myths about a star that fell from the sky and caused fires and cold. Another example is that of the Sumerians, whose myth of a great flood coincides with evidence of flooding in Mesopotamia at the end of the last ice age. When science and myth converge, a fertile space opens up to understand how the ancients recorded and transmitted their experiences in their own way. Chapter 16. The Importance of Ancestral Knowledge. Today, we have advanced technologies that allow us to see inside the Earth, date millennial remains, and observe distant galaxies. However, this does not mean that we know everything. The ancestral memory preserved in myths and oral traditions could contain keys that science still does not understand. For example, the Australian indigenous peoples have stories that describe the rise of the sea and the transformation of coasts, which coincide with paleoceanographic data. Andean peoples remember earlier eras in which gigantic temples were built, and these memories could correspond to ancient civilizations. The importance of listening to and respecting these stories lies in the fact that they complete the picture and warn us about events that could be repeated. On the other hand, preserving knowledge also implies protecting archives themselves. Many libraries of the ancient world were burned or destroyed. The most famous example is the Library of Alexandria, whose manuscripts were lost forever. If there really were 21 restarts, enormous amounts of knowledge were possibly lost in each one. This reality highlights the need to create resilient repositories, such as distributed digital archives or libraries that can withstand cataclysms. Knowledge is not only power, it is insurance for the future. Through its preservation, humanity can learn from its mistakes and avoid repeating them. Chapter 17. Forgotten Technologies and Advanced Science. Among the enthusiasts of restarts arises the idea that ancient civilizations possessed advanced technologies that disappeared with them. Some point to the precision of the stones of Pumapunku as evidence of unknown tools. Others mention the legends of Vimanas, flying chariots described in Indian texts, or the supposed machines that the Greeks attributed to the gods. There are those who suggest that the pyramids of Egypt and Mesoamerica functioned as energy devices. Although these claims often lack conclusive proof, they fuel the imagination and pose an interesting question. Could technological knowledge have been lost in restarts and rediscovered over millennia? The progress curve would not be an ascending line, but a series of waves that rise and fall. From a scientific perspective, we know that technology evolves according to need and context. When a society collapses, many of its tools and methods are lost. Even so, some techniques are transmitted in secret or stored in objects that are later reinterpreted. For example, the texts of Archimedes disappeared for centuries until a palimpsest revealed his ideas about mathematics and physics. If this happened in recent history, it is not unreasonable to think it also happened in more ancient times. Archaeological discoveries of ancient batteries, sophisticated gear mechanisms, and evidence of surgery on skulls demonstrate that our ancestors could create more complex artifacts than we imagine. The possibility that some of these techniques were lost and later reappeared in another restart opens a fascinating field of study. Chapter 18. Catastrophes and Morality. There is a moral thread in many destruction stories. The global flood is attributed to humanity's corruption. Greek legends speak of the impiety of the people of Deucalion's time. In Chinese mythology, the flood relates to disobedience and the need for purification. Even the Book of Enoch tells how a world corrupted by the Watchers and the Giants was judged. These narratives link catastrophes with people's behavior, suggesting that the universe responds to human morality. Some see in this a symbolic warning. If society strays too far from the principles of justice and balance, nature reacts with a restart. Although this perspective may seem mystical, it reflects an intuition that persists. Our actions have consequences that can resonate through time. In contemporary reflection, this idea translates into the relationship between humans and the environment. Industrialization and the unbridled exploitation of resources have generated climate changes, massive extinctions, and pollution that threaten the planet's stability. Some activists call this situation an impending collapse, similar to the restarts described in myths. The difference is that instead of a divine judgment, we face the natural consequences of our actions. Morality then becomes an ecological and social responsibility. Knowledge of the restarts reminds us that neglect and arrogance can lead to disaster, while responsibility and respect can prevent a collapse and ensure a more harmonious continuity. Chapter 19. Lost Cultures Beyond Atlantis. When talking about pre-flood civilizations, many think of Atlantis described by Plato. However, there are accounts of other lost lands. Lemuria, also called Mu, was proposed in the 19th century by scientists who tried to explain biological similarities between India and Madagascar. Although the geological theory of continental drift discarded it, the name passed into esoteric mythology. According to some theosophical traditions, Lemuria was home to a spiritual civilization that disappeared in a cataclysm. In the Pacific, the mythical Hiva, in Polynesian traditions, sank into the sea, forcing its inhabitants to migrate to other islands. In the Andean culture, there is talk of Paititi, a legendary city hidden in the jungle that could be a vestige of a civilization prior to the Incas. These narratives, although lacking verification, feed the imagination and serve as symbols of earlier worlds that were erased from common memory. Interest in these lost cultures reflects the longing to discover a hidden history. It also functions as a metaphor for the cycles. Each vanished civilization represents a restart, whether real or imagined. In investigating these legends, it is important to distinguish between fantasy and evidence. However, their persistence indicates that humanity intuits the existence of great voids in the official narrative. Exploring these legends with a critical spirit allows us to value ancestral knowledge without falling into credulity. It also teaches us that the cultural richness of the world is far wider than what is recorded, and that many traditions may contain fragments of truths we have yet to understand. Chapter 20. Philosophy and reflection on the cycles. Eastern and Western philosophies have reflected on the cyclical nature of existence. In Greece, the Stoics thought that the cosmos went through cycles of conflagration and regeneration. Hindus see time as a wheel that turns, in which the world is created, preserved, and destroyed by Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva respectively. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs believed that the universe had passed through 5 suns, each destroyed by a different disaster. These cyclical views not only describe the cosmos, but influence how one lives. Knowing that everything passes and returns brings peace in the face of loss and change, and also inspires us to maintain justice and harmony, because what is sown in one cycle may be reaped in the next. In modern philosophy, some thinkers have taken up cyclical ideas. The German philosopher Nietzsche spoke of the eternal return, the idea that everything that has happened will happen again infinitely. This idea serves as an ethical test. If you were to live your life eternally, how would you live it? Applied to history, it implies that humanity's actions will repeat and that we must assume responsibility for them. Other philosophers, such as Spengler, compared civilizations to organisms that are born, mature, and die. These analogies reinforce the notion of cycles and restarts and invite us to see our present as part of a continuous flow, not as an end point. Chapter 21. Conclusion and Call to Action. The idea that humanity has been restarted 21 times may seem fantastical. However, by exploring archaeological evidence, geological traces, ancestral myths, and philosophical reflections, a more complex and fascinating panorama emerges. We do not know for sure how many times the cycle of destruction and rebirth has repeated, but we do know that history is full of ruptures and new beginnings. The Bible itself speaks of a God who decides to erase the old and start anew. The traditions of peoples across the world narrate similar episodes. Modern science confirms that nature can change the course of history in an instant. Together, these elements compose a symphony of voices that suggests that human life is more fragile and at the same time more resilient than we think. Faced with this understanding, one final reflection remains. Each generation has the duty to preserve what has been learned and to act wisely. If restarts are inevitable, we must build societies capable of resisting and adapting. If restarts can be avoided or mitigated, we must cultivate an ethic of care for the earth and for our fellow humans. In either case, the narrative of the restarts invites us to participate consciously in history, to not take our place in time for granted, and to prepare for change. We invite you to share these ideas, to investigate on your own, to subscribe to our channel The Secret Bible, and to boost our content so that more seekers join this intellectual and spiritual adventure. Together we can unravel the secrets of our past and perhaps influence the next chapter of human history.